Hey guys, thanks for tuning in again. We're going to go over the Kraken, the VEKTA.5. We're going to go over it a little bit more in detail. We had a ton of comments, a lot of interest just generated from the last video just by pulling it out of the box. I've gotten a chance to break in the engine. I've got a little bit of drive time on it, and I'm excited to talk some more about it. I really want to go over some of the details that make this truck so special, and as well as a little points that I'm going to pay attention to on maybe finding a slightly better solution. I will start out by saying that this is easily the best fifth scale car that has ever been released, and quite possibly the coolest radio control car I have ever driven. The thing about the Kraken that makes it so special is that the owners of Kraken, Rob and Melissa, they poured their heart and soul into this thing. This was born out of passion. It wasn't out of like, oh, let's take an existing thing and just make it bigger. But this is something where they were passionate enough, and Rob particularly, to just be like, I want to make the coolest radio control car in existence. And so it's been a process of, I think, over 3 years from the time that it first began work and design to now, to the final production release. I saw the first prototype last July, and so it's been a long time coming. So the best part about this is that it was just started with a total blank slate, where there was really no preconceived things that it had to be. It was just like the only goal that Kraken had was to be the best. So let's go over and talk about some of the things that make this car so special and unique. First, we're going to just get started by removing the roll cage, which is done really simply. There's 4 screws and 1 body clip, which is pretty easily done. 2 screws in the middle, 2 screws in the back, and then this body clip up front that we'll show a little detailed shot of. It just pulls out from behind the roll cage or the shock tower, and then you just simply pull the roll cage straight off. From now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at a little bit of details on the front of the car. This car, I have added the optional aluminum Servo saver arm that's available from Kraken RC. It's one of their official hop-up parts. This is ideal for guys that are using the single big high-tech HS1000 series servo or the dual inline servos. The stock steering servo, it's got decent torque that will get by for most guys that are out bashing and stuff. But for those that are really trying to beat on their truck, it would be a nice upgrade to add. One of the other things that I'm not crazy about is the throttle linkage, particularly the linkage that connects to the carburetor. The little plastic standoff spacer, it pivots on just the bolt itself. I would have liked to have seen if that little plastic throttle rod guide would have had a little bushing, similar to some of the other fifth scale cars out there, particularly like the Losi 5. The other thing that I will say is an absolute requirement on this is going to be Outerwears filter covers for the pull start as well as the crankcase. What you can see from this close-up here is the Outerwears protects the pull start from this right front tire, which just has that kind of open area right there, and it just flings dirt and grass and sand directly at the pull starter. So you have got to put an Outerwears pre-filter on it, unquestionably. Other great things that we'll see as we move towards the back of the car, we're going to focus on some of the cool things about it. Would be, a lot of people have wondered, this whole rear trailing arm suspension, is it going to hold up? I see plastic pieces back there. The answer is yes. The rose joints on the end are enormous. I do not question their integrity. The other nice thing is that they kind of they slot into those trailing arms, and so it's not like they're just a blunt end, but it's actually kind of cuffed over the joint. And then particularly where it mounts to the chassis, as we'll show in the close-up there, you can see it has a nice aluminum mount that sandwiches it, and then that actually bolts through into the machined aluminum transmission housing. which does a great job. One thing that I noticed within about 10 or 15 minutes of driving was the rear suspension, or sorry, the rear sway bar. So the sway bar has these little, this little kind of guide thing that sandwiches the vertical plate of the chassis. And so on the outside there's a lock nut that kind of jams the sway bar guide. And what I noticed was that the lock nuts, they have a serrated edge and a smooth edge, and the smooth edge was facing inwards when the serrated edge should be facing inwards. So I ended up needing to remove those and then added a little thread lock and then tightened it on. If you notice also on the little sway bar guide, there's a set screw, and that's not supposed to be totally tight. That's supposed to be loose so that the sway bar can rotate within the little guide, the sway bar guide. It's just to accommodate different thickness sway bars, so that it can take up the slop. But you know, it's just the nice little attention to details that you see like that make this car truly the greatest fifth scale car I've ever seen. Moving on to other things, it's got a single disc brake that's really big that sits on the rear drive shaft. I did not experience any brake fade. It is extremely grabby, and I'm interested to find out. I mean, it brings this thing to a skidding stop from full speed, right to a skidding stop. So it didn't seem to have any brake fade. There is a little bit of galling because it is just a metal on metal setup there. I'm interested to find out how the ring and pinion hold up in both the front and rear, because you know, slamming on the brakes at high speed on a high traction surface usually wreaks a bit of havoc. And so now, speaking of the diff, we can look at the diff. So the rear solid axle housing is one continuous piece, and then in the back there's this little genius little cap. And so when you remove the cap, what you see is a differential that is just the size of your fist, and with a big ring gear. And the beauty of it is it has these little steel capturing rings that go over the bearings that support the differential and the output shafts, and then those actually bolt physically to the rear solid axle housing. So there's no shims, there's nothing that's going to get all sloppy and loose. I mean, those things are fixed in there. As you also can see, that a lot of care was taken on this car when it was put together. I mean, I have got to tell Kraken that they deserve a ton of praise for just the quality that the car is assembled with. I mean, every single metal on metal screw has a generous amount of thread lock. The gears are all properly greased and torqued. It's just like the air filter was oiled, but it wasn't over oiled. It was, you know, every single thing is just total attention to detail. And so this truly, I believe, is the best fifth scale car that has been produced. You've got to see it in person to really appreciate just the size of the thing. And then the overall driving characteristics, you know, I would equate it with the standard 32 to something like a low C5 with a 32 cc, you know, as far as being able to accelerate, the top speed, you know, it's right there, but it is incredibly stable. The ultra wide stance of it, this is wider than a low C5T, but with the same wheelbase, it's very predictable in handling. It's extremely stable. The shocks do an incredible job. There's not a single bit of air in any of these shocks. They are perfectly bled from the factory. The extra heft and the weight actually lets the real world physical dynamics take effect. And so when you're just bombing the buggy all the way across whatever terrain you're on, it just soaks it up, and it makes everything else look weak. So this is awesome. Next week, what you'll see is I'm going to put a video together of me running it and just beating the crap out of it. And so if there's anything specific that you want to know more on, just make a comment. A like, a thumbs up is always cool. Sharing it with your buddies and your friends on social media and Facebook is appreciated. But yeah, this is the best truck I've ever had, and I just want to say thanks so much to Kraken for showing the fifth scalers that they care about this market and this hobby as much as we do. And so yeah, that's it.